So finally, this series about the war in Taranaki in 1860 and 61 has got into the 1860s and the fighting. I'm sure you're all very excited for more of that, but this episode isn't going to be about the conflict. The start of the war led to a lot of debate in the societies of New Zealand, and I think it is better to discuss these separately rather than interrupting the war for hui petitions and parliamentary debates that don't actually have much to do with the fighting. So this episode will be all about the discord that arose over the start of the war in Māori communities and the consequences of the government's methods. We will get back to the fighting in the next episode. It will be remembered that in February, Lieutenant Colonel Murray had declared martial law in Taranaki, and that this proclamation was poorly translated. As a reminder, because soon will be commenced the work of the soldiers of the Queen against the natives at Taranaki, who are naughty fighting against the authority of the Queen. Now, I, the Governor, do openly publish and proclaim this word, that the fighting law will extend at this time to Taranaki as a fixed law until the time when it shall be revoked by proclamation. This had caused some consternation amongst Māori, so Gore Brown made an effort to allay their concerns. On the 1st of March he wrote a 15-point manifesto justifying military intervention in Waitara and distributing this around the North Island. The 15 points basically say that Kingi has no claim to the land, that Te Taylor's claim was properly investigated and found to be true, that Te Taylor had been paid so the land was now the Queen's, and that Kingi was putting himself above the Queen by interfering. The final point sums up his argument. 15. The Governor desires peace. It depends upon William King whether there shall be peace or not. If he ceases to interfere with what is not his own, he will be treated as a friend, and there will be peace. In Taranaki, this manifesto and a speech Gore Brown gave to Māori in New Plymouth do not seem to have had much impact. Ngāti Ruanui and much of Taranaki iwi came to assist Te Ātiawa. However, this manifesto did have an impact in the Kingitanga. While Taranaki was heading to war, there was a major Kingitanga hui in Waiuku, with around 700 people in attendance. Most of the northern Waikato iwi had not acknowledged Potato Te Wherewhere as king, instead titling him as their mātua, or parent. The Waiuku meeting was Potato's attempt to bring the northern Waikato truly into the king movement. However, the proclamation of martial law was also a significant talking point. The general consensus was that things would work out okay. After all, the governor's manifesto had said that he wanted peace, so peace was believed to be the most likely outcome. Potato managed to have himself acknowledged as king by the northern iwi by stating his platform as king. This is Potato's request that he spake. Hold fast to Christianity. Hold fast love. Hold fast law. What is the worth or advantage of all other work? Christianity is not a wealth we have purchased. It is a wealth that has been freely given to us, and wealth for which we have made no adequate return. Māoris, your former god was Yonuku, the man-eater. You have a different god now, the great god of heaven. Therefore let war cease in New Zealand among both Māoris and Pākehās. Let all the evils that may arise, great and small, be judged by the law. Here we rest, till the evil spirit comes to spoil our work. These statements were important for the northern Waikato Māori. Their economy was closely integrated into trading with Auckland, and any conflict between king and governor would seriously disrupt their way of life. But with Potato stating that they owed a debt to Pākehā in exchange for Christianity, that he was committed to peace and committed to legal resolution of disputes, effectively mollified their concerns. Not all of the Waikato iwi and Hapu joined the Kingitanga, but the New Zealander reported that only 6 of the 20 speakers at this hui spoke against the Kingitanga. The government-owned Māori Messenger limits itself to saying that the discussion was divided in opinion. On the question of Waitara, the meeting was generally inclined to support the governor, but many thought there was justification for investigating the causes of the war. Witako, a Te Ātiawa chief from Wellington and a cousin of Wiremu Kingi, was asked to investigate the cause of the conflict on his way home. At around the same time, a deputation from Taranaki went to seek the aid of the Kingitanga. The deputation was large, around 60 people, but they did not have the support of Wiremu Kingi, who was still unwilling to submit himself to the king movement. They arrived in Arawahia on the 10th of April, accompanied by a number of Ngāti Maniapoto who had joined them. They had left Taranaki before the fighting started, but news of the violence had bet them to Taranaki. The people of Te Atiawa, Taranaki and Ngāti Rurunui ceremonially submitted themselves to Potato. After the ceremony, discussion turned to the possibility of kingitanga support for Wiramukingi. Tapihana from Ngāti Hikairo at Kawhia spoke and turned the king's principles against him. I begin not with the events of today. I go to the words which Potato set out. Te whakapono, te aroha, te tura. Religion, love, law. First, religion. This is your work, Pākehās and men of religion. Walk in the ways of God and pray for peace upon all men. Our third motto is law. This is our work. Let us take care of this and work it out. If the governor go on to a piece of land, I shall follow his steps. If he opens roads, I shall be there. If he sheds blood, I shall be there as well as he. I seek life for the people. I say, save the land and the paths for your children. Our second motto is love. Our forefathers lost this by their wars. We seek to restore it. These are the mottos for all the world. I mourn for the blood of Te Rangatake. My blood is the blood of Te Rangatake. I shall go and seek Rangatake and Kukutai at once. I am but one, but I shall go. If I fall, it will be good, never mind that. Tapihana believed that by starting the violence, the governor had not acted in a Christian manner, had not supported the law, and not acted with love. Therefore he felt justified in fighting against the governor. However, a number of others opposed him. Te Wetini of Ngāti Hawa is representative of their disagreements. There was a time when I was strong towards the governor, for when I was thirsty he gave me drink, or naked he clothed me. Now they have taken away the water and the garments. What can be thoughts of the men that have done this? What? Potato is a Pākehā. Let us do nothing else. Let Potato be our work at present. I don't entirely understand what he means when he says Potato is a Pākehā. Te Wetini is no longer supportive of the governor, but he thinks that the supporters of the king need to strengthen the king movement before getting involved in wars. Karaka Tomo Te Whakapo characterised this as a pā being unfinished, and that it was better that they finish their pā before setting out. At the end of the discussions, Potato made it clear he was not supportive of intervening in the conflict yet. I am not willing that the evil work of former times should be brought back. I will not consent, nor will I consent that you, Ngāti Maniapoto, should take your guns. You found me living in the presence of the governor, his servant. I wish to live and die at Mangere. At your request I came here. Now you would make me like Te Raupraha? In the newspaper, The New Zealander reported the outcome of the meeting. But the Waikato chiefs refused to move at present. They say that they must wait until the whole of their tribes meet, when their course will be determined. It would therefore appear that the Waikato tribes are not intending anything like a general insurrection, but they may arrive at the conclusion to go and help William King to fight for the possession of the disputed land, and to do their utmost to prevent future sales. The men from the iwi of Taranaki must have been disappointed by this result, but they did not return empty-handed. After the meeting at Ngaruawahia, Ngāti Maniapoto held a runanga at Kihikihi, and many of the people present decided to support Wiramukingi in the war. A man named Epiha Tokohihi led about 150 Ngāti Maniapoto to Taranaki alongside the returning Taranaki delegation. When Potato heard of this, he asked Rewi Maniapoto, a prominent figure in both the King movement and Ngāti Maniapoto, to intervene and ask these warriors to return home and await a larger decision by the kingitanga. Rewi caught up with the war party and asked them to return home, but Epiha refused. Rewi then wrote to Robert Paris to see if he could help convince the Ngāti Maniapoto to head back to the Waikato. But this was a miscalculation. When he arrived, Ngāti Maniapoto were willing to listen to him, but the smaller group from the iwi of Taranaki wanted to kill him on the spot for his part in the conflict. It was Epiha that saved Paris's life. He criticised Paris for being so foolish as to approach a hostile war party, but he arranged an escort for Paris away from the danger, although Paris did have to say a prayer for the health of the king and the queen. Afterwards Paris tried to thank Epiha, but Epiha responded, "I shall yet meet you as an enemy in the daylight." This all happened despite the kingitanga maintaining a neutral position on the conflict at New Plymouth. In May, the King movement had planned a large meeting at Ngaruawahia to finalise the agreement to the movement. It was intended to be a largely symbolic moment when the iwi that had earlier proclaimed Potato king would be joined by those of the lower Waikato, and they would all raise Potato up as a king. However, The war in Taranaki added a more sombre tone to proceedings. This hui was attended by around 3,000 people, including a number of Pākehā, most prominently Donald Maclean. Many of the Māori, including Potato, expressed a desire for peace so that Māori would be able to enjoy the material and spiritual benefits of close contact with the Europeans. But a number did disagree. In the early stages of the discussion, while there were splits on the correct course of action, most expressed uncertainty over whether the land was Kingi's or Taylor's, and sometimes concern over why this question had not been satisfactorily answered. William Tamihana, the kingmaker and most prominent leader of Ngāti Hawa, expressed himself in biblical terms. I am disturbed by the letter received from William King. I wish to understand the case, but do not see it. They, the Europeans, have forsaken the right way. They have become deranged like the king of Babylon, who was turned into a forest. But let us not take up arms in an unrighteous cause. Ahab coveted Naboth's vineyard, and because Naboth would not give up the inheritance of his father, Ahab was greatly disturbed. Jezebel his wife saw his trouble, and said, I will give it thee. She brought Naboth to death by falsehood, and took it, but God avenged the deed. I do not forget some of the kings of Judah who engaged in unrighteous war, how they perished in their sin. Therefore I hesitate, and say, let us find out the owner. William King says the land is his. Taylor says it is his. I say, let us find out the owner. Do not make haste, lest we make a mistake. But you will recall that William Utaku had previously been asked to investigate the dispute at Waitara. He had been accompanied by a man named Kapeliera, who relayed some of his testimony on the investigation. I accompanied Utaku on his return from Waikato. I wanted to have an explanation about the Parawai. We intended to see William King, but on reaching Waitara we heard that war had commenced, that Pākehās had been killed, so Tako would not visit King. We saw Ihaya and Taylor. Taylor asked, for what purpose have you come? We replied, to inquire about the mat and to take the truth back to Waikato. He said, the piece is small. The greater portion of Waitara is King's. Mine is in the centre. Then came the news that Waikato was about to attack Auckland. I went to the King and said, I have come to inquire about the mat. He replied, the report is correct. I looked on in silence. I said, that was your error. You ought to have taken it away. I did not, he replied. I simply threw a word at the governor and said to him, I will not give you my land. I did not take up the mat, but I spake my word. The Pākehā wants our land, but this war is about your Māori king. Don't listen to the Pākehā, but bring your flag to Waitara. Go back and clear them out. Send them all back to England. In this account, both Taylor and Kingi were partly to blame. Taylor had attempted to sell land which Kingi owned, but Kingi had not opposed the sale rigorously enough. However, Kingi asserted that despite his shortcomings, the war was not about the land at Waitara, and was instead a larger conflict over power in New Zealand. The hui did not immediately attempt to address these issues, and instead the focus of the hui turned towards the ceremonial aspects. But discussion again and again returned to the war in Taranaki. Many asserted their friendship towards the Pākehā and a reluctance to fight against them, but others would respond by stating that Gore Brown had acted unjustly and needed to be stopped. Te Wetini expressed this. Planting 3 sticks in the ground, he pointed to the first and said, This represents the Queen, the middle one God, the third the Mana of New Zealand. Taking a piece of flax, he tied them together, intimating that they were once united. Breaking the flax, he remarked, The love has been cut, the union exists no longer, the governor has severed it. Throwing down the stick that represented the Queen. That, he said, we have thrown away, now only God and the Maoris remain. You are in the house of bondage, but I am determined to maintain my mana. Therefore I turn my back on Pākehās and my face to Taranaki. My mana rests on that land, and I go to defend it. However, Ngā Waka Te Ao Tirangi from Ngāti Mahanga presented the opposite argument privately to Potato. The truth, my brother, kindness to the Pākehā, be like I am, my friend. Let it be friendship and kindness. Let the waters of the Waikato flow gently on till they reach the sea. Let there be no ripple on the stream. Let it find its way to the ocean undisturbed. As for Taranaki, its troubles are its own. They have arisen from its own acts. You are no stranger to such things. That you should be drawn aside, the thing that is right for you is truth and kindness. Be kind, my brother. Maintain your friendship with the Pākehā. The Pākehā has done no wrong. The wrong has been committed by the Māori. Be like me, my brother, be like me. He repeatedly says, be like me now, in relation to his forgiveness of Pākehā after the murder of his son Hemi on the streets of Auckland 6 years prior. Williamunela Te Awa I Taia, also of Ngāti Mahanga, picked up this theme in the Runanga. Thompson, hear my word, while I tell you where you have gone wrong. You are casting your net over both land and men. This is your error. Cease to act thus. End your attempts to enclose the land in your net, and end your attempts to throw it over men. Let your sayings and doings be straight. What can you do? Do you not see how Potato clings to the Pākehās? He will not unloose his hold. The basket of Te Ao Te Rangi, let that remain in its grave, let it not be named. Thompson, do not get into trouble, lest you draw me into trouble also. Be admonished, take warning, lest we should turn aside into the old path that has been so long forsaken, meaning the path of war. Williamunela was an opponent of the kingitanga. He thought it would lead to war with the Pākehā. But when he said that Te Ao Te Rangi's basket remains buried, he was speaking of the need for forgiveness of Pākehā transgressions. Potato made his view on the matter clear later, while two men, Tamati and Pātini, representing Potato and Williamukingi respectively, acted out the conflict. Pātini, playing Kingi, said that he had placed the land under Potato's mana. Potato then instructed Tamati to give the land to the governor, since Potato would rather have peace than the Waitara. Conversation finally turned to the outcome of Wītako's investigation. He had written to Waikato the previous month, and the content was already widely known. This is a message from me to Waikato, that you may have clear understanding about the foolish work of the people of Taranaki. I have come here and have ascertained the grounds of this trouble. It is as follows. My friends, this trouble belongs to Williamukingi. Another trouble belongs to the Taranaki people, greater than all the evils of this world. Let your thoughts be consistent with your promises to me, which we have seen. Friends, your business is to do only that which is right. Do not look in this direction towards the foolish things of the world. Friends, do you listen? The ground of this trouble concerns the land only. It does not concern the king. Do not you be led astray by the evil spirit. From your faithful friend in the Lord, Wītaku Ngā Tata. Wītaku said that this was not about the king movement, but was a simple dispute over land. He later clarified that he believed the king was not responsible for this land, because the king's flag had been raised at Waitara shortly after the initial payment had been made. This meant the war in Taranaki was not an attack on the king movement, nor was the king movement obliged to defend Kingi. Therefore, the war belongs to Kingi instead of Potato. Kaperiera spoke in disagreement with the letter. When asked, he said that the flag had been raised before the money had been paid. Donald McLean, who had been present throughout the conversation, spoke to say that Kaperiera was mistaken, and asked to address the Runanga on the details the next day. However, the next day was a Sunday and devoted to religious ceremonies. The following Monday was mostly spent in preparing and then holding a feast. McLean did not get an opportunity to speak until late on the Monday. The speech was long and covered the entire history of the relationship between Te Atiawa and the government in North Taranaki. Of particular note is his account of the meeting where Te Taylor Manuka offered Waitara for sale. The tailor said to William King, "Listen, I'm about to offer mine. Governor, here is mine." But the governor did not speak. Taylor said again, "Give me your word, governor." "McLean, will not you and the governor consent to mine?" William King sat there all the time and heard. When Taylor had urged it once, twice, thrice, 4 times, the governor said, "If it be an undisputed claim, I accept it." Then Taylor laid down his parawai, but William King did not take it away. He only called out and said, "Waitara shall not go," and went away. But we did not take it at once. You say we were hasty, but we were not. 8 months passed over before the bargain was closed. We inquired of all the people, and could not find any rightful claimants but Taylor and his friends. Shortly after this, Te Hiuhiu of Ngāti Tuwharetoa interrupted McLean and said that it was getting too dark. McLean's speech had kept the audience interested, and this interruption was not appreciated, but it was resolved to end the discussion for the night and pick it up again in the morning. But the next morning, a large number of people occupied themselves on preparing for the flag-raising ceremony and could not be convinced to convene to hear the end of McLean's speech. By midday, Maclean got tired of waiting and departed the hui. Potato farewelled him. Go return home. My word to you is I mean no evil, I mean no wrong. It is not me for the black skin to speak to you, to the white skin. It is for you, the white skin, to teach me. I am black, but though the skin is black outside, on the inside my heart is white. Farewell, go in peace to your home, farewell. Maclean responded, Farewell, Potato, your thoughts are good. It is well that they should continue to be so. It is the people who are leading you astray. Farewell. Afterwards, Potato announced that the flag would be raised the next day. However, rain delayed the ceremony. When the flagstaff was finally raised on the 31st, Potato addressed the crowd on how relations with the Pākehā were to be conducted. The work of former days we have forsaken. Let us cleave to the good work we have begun. Should the flag be dishonoured by these people, the Upper Waikato, you, Lower Waikato, must uphold it. The principle is now established. Support it. I do not say support me. Should the Pākehās come and kill me, never mind, let it be so. Do not avenge my death. The work of former days was war, and the new good work was peace. He described going to war in Taranaki as dishonouring the flag of the kingitanga. But the phrasing he used allows for individual people, hapu and iwi, to dishonour the kingitanga by going to war in support of Rumukingi. However, the Daily Southern Cross gave the final word to a person named Nanaya. I have no such generous feelings. I require blood for blood. The King movement would not make any more formal decisions on the war in Taranaki. In part this is because of the death of Potato a few weeks after this hui. There was no clear successor to Potato Te Whenowhero. The kingitanga is an elective monarchy, and there were 3 candidates to replace Potato. The first was his eldest son Matutela, who had previously been discussed as a successor, but was regarded by many as not being suitable for the role. He had only a few achievements to his name, and was not known as an orator capable of guiding people. Therefore his elder sister Te Paia Tiaho was an option. She was considered a more capable leader, and as a teenager in the 1830s had taken a leading role in making peace with Ngāti Kahungunu. However, in the 1860s her agenda counted against her, particularly since she would be taking a leading role negotiating with Pākehā society. The third candidate, and seemingly the least popular, was not descended from Potato, but was instead the kingmaker Reru Tamihana. Although he was widely respected, he was a somewhat controversial figure, being more committed to Christianity and pacifism than was normal in 1860s Māoridom. No decision was made on the succession until Reru Tamihana withdrew his candidacy and supported Matutela. This effectively gave Matutela the majority, and in late August or early September 1860 he was raised up to the kingship in a small ceremony as Potato II. However, he is best known as Tawhio, and I will call him by this name from now on. While Tawhio was securing his position as king, the kingitanga would not take a deliberate position on the war, although a number of people from the various iwi of the king movement would participate in the conflict. However, this was not the only significant group of Māori that had a stake in what happened at Waitara. In particular, there were a large number of Te Atiawa living in the Cook Strait region, near the Pākehā towns of Wellington and Nelson. These towns found the soldiers of their garrisons heading to Taranaki to join the war, and because of this the settlers were very keen to maintain peace with Te Atiawa. As can be guessed, the news of the conflict in Taranaki led to a degree of concern amongst Māori. At the end of March, a large meeting was held at Otaki, including people from Te Atiawa, Ngāti Raukawa and Ngāti Toa. Around 500 people were in attendance, and like the kingitanga at Ngaruawahia, the Otaki meeting was divided. Tamihana Te Rauparaha from Ngāti Toa says that the older chiefs and himself were in favour of peace and leaving the Taranaki iwi to fight the war, but there were, however, some inconsiderate expressions from some of the inferior people. They were rebuked, and so it ended. However, the peaceful outcome of this meeting did little to reassure settlers. The Wellington Independent newspaper reported, "The natives at Papawai, Wairarapa, had a meeting on Wednesday evening. What was done there we do not know, but a report got abroad that it was of a most warlike character, and so frightened one of the settlers that he forthwith removed his family into the hut. The report has since been inquired into, and all that can be learnt is that somebody said so. The mere fact that the Reverend Mr. Ronaldson, who lives at Papawai and was, we believe, present at the meeting, never communicated a syllable to the magistrates that the meeting of the natives was not of an extraordinary character. All sorts of rumours about the natives having been engaged in building a pa at the hut and cutting a roadway from Otaki have also been circulating, but nobody has seen either the pa or the road. While these rumours circulated around Wellington, Isaac Featherston, the superintendent of Wellington Province, visited many of the Māori settlements and found that while many were angry with the government or the Pākehā in general for spreading rumours, very few were interested in attacking the settlers in Wellington. To further this understanding, he arranged a meeting in Wellington between the magistrates of the province and the chiefs of the local iwi. Here all the Māori present wished for peace. Te Puni spoke first, and most of the people present reflected his views. Let others come from other places and make disturbance, but let us live in peace. Let us wait for others to come from a distance to cast disturbances, but let us live as one family. However, his son Henare, who had apparently left the land he was occupying near New Plymouth to come to Wellington, added a twist to the general agreement. I salute you, Pākehās. What has been already said is the opinion of all of us. The Pākehās are very numerous, we are very few. If the Pākehās attack us, we will stand on the defensive. I am the representative of the younger portion of our tribe, and their sentiments are in unison with what has been said. Tamihana Te Raupraha finished the Māori-speaking order by asking everyone that agreed to live in peace with the Pākehās to raise their hand. Every Māori present did so. Featherston and a number of other magistrates then spoke of how grateful they were for the harmony in Wellington, and that Māori should not be concerned by the presence of militia. The governor had ordered them to work, and they had to obey. But they would be limited to the barracks and fortifications so long as there was peace. The meeting adjourned to the Supreme Court, where Te Puni proposed a toast to the health of Queen Victoria, and the meeting parted ways, everyone apparently content with the current state of affairs. However, there was something that the Māori hadn't mentioned. They were not going to take up arms against the governor in support of their northern relatives, but they were attempting a different way to aid the Māori of Taranaki. In late April, Governor Gore Brown received a letter from Parakaia Te Paupa and all the elders residing at Otaki, with the intention that he forward the contents of the letter onto the Queen. Contained within was a petition that had been passed around at the meeting at Otaki, and received 501 signatures asking for Gore Brown's sacking. The petition ends with, "This unwarrantable proceeding of this governor has occasioned grief and confusion to all of us, because we know that this system is not yours, this taking away without cause of the land of any person or of the orphan and widow. Wherefore, we, your loving children, cry to you, and pray that you will remove this governor, lest he remains to promote evil in our islands. Do send us a governor who is competent properly to carry out your measures, that we and the Europeans may live together peaceable together in an attachment to you." Placed in the unenviable situation of being expected to forward a petition calling for his own dismissal, Gore Brown decided to investigate the petition before passing it on. I retained the petition until the next mail. First, because the language is an evident translation from English. Second, because a great proportion of the names are in a European's handwriting. And third, because I desire to make some inquiries as to the genuineness of the signatures. Clearly, Gore Brown suspected that this wasn't a genuine petition, but instead the plot of an unnamed European who had manipulated Māori or forged their signatures in order to complete this petition. This European would not go unnamed for long. Attention landed on the Archdeacon Hadfield very quickly. You might remember that Hadfield was a friend of William Kingi. He had baptised Kingi in the 1840s and had remained in correspondence with Kingi up until the start of the conflict. Hadfield was also based at Otaki, so it was very easy to pick him out as the leading suspect as the mastermind behind this plot. Evidence for this plot was soon found. In May, when Gore Brown forwarded on the petition, he included 3 statements along with it to throw doubt on the veracity of the petition. Henry Turton, one of the local magistrates, had heard rumours of this petition and investigated the origins of the petition. He talked to Ihakara, a chief from the Manawatu, who had signed the petition the day after the meeting. Ihakara alleged that Hadfield had advised the Māori people on the procedure for a petition, but did not attend the meeting or collect signatures himself. Ihakara told Turton that the names on the petition were not necessarily accurate. Some people who were not present had their names added, and some, such as Ihakara, had their names added despite their objections. The second letter was from William C. Rank, the local district commissioner. He also reported a conversation with Ihakara. In this account, Hadfield helped with editing the petition and was the driving force behind the creation of the petition. In fact, when the petition returned to Hadfield with only 100 or so signatures, he was angry and insisted that they go back and get more signatures. However, the meeting had ended, so the other 400 or so signatures were added without the consent of the people in order to appease Hadfield. The writer of the third letter should be obvious by this point. It was Ihakala himself. The final letter is very short. Ihakala says that it was the idea of Hadfield and his men, and that his name was written without his consent. Now, this was obviously one person's word written in 3 different ways. It also seems like no one had bothered to ask for Hadfield's version of events. Before sending these messages off, he asked the Reverend Duncan to investigate this petition in greater detail. Unfortunately, Duncan wasn't able to complete his investigation before the May Mail left for London, so his investigation followed in June. Don't get too excited. The reason his investigation was delayed was because his chief and only witness was away. This witness was Ihakala, of course. Duncan eventually met with Ihakala and another man, Ukiki Tiahu, and went through the petition marking every name that they believed was illegitimate. By my count, they marked 159 names as being illegitimate, or as Turton described it, almost 400. At this point, though, the people that had supported the petition heard of the governor's attempts to delay and discredit the petition. 106 Māori signed another letter to the governor. We have heard that Tuakana and Ihakala have unwarrantably cut up our names. Our darkness is very great. Friend Governor Brown, that paper was from all of us, from all the men who directed that our sentiments should be written to the Queen and our names attached. It was not a little thought that caused us to write that paper. It was a very great thought, and let not one man presume to cut up the thoughts agreed upon by the whole tribe. Hadfield seems to have learnt of the accusations against him comparatively late, only after the petition and the communication back to England became public as a result of parliamentary debate. He only responded to these allegations in August. In short, he points out that all the accusations came from one man, Ihakala, and that Hadfield had not committed any of the actions Ihakala alleged. He also points out that the governor's initial claim that the petition was translated from English and the names written by a European were not supported by an examination of the documents by experts in the Māori language. But of course, Ihakala's account hadn't suggested this either. Hadfield ended by saying, "When I consider the fact that more than 500 men met under circumstances that occasioned great excitement, having lost all confidence in the governor of the colony, and that they determined after 2 or 3 days' deliberation to address a humble and loyal petition to Her Majesty, praying for the removal of that governor, and particularly to await Her Majesty's reply, I certainly regard this as remarkable proof of the advancement of religion, civilization, law, and order among them. I deem it right to warn Her Majesty's government against confounding dissatisfaction at the governor's proceedings with dissatisfaction to the Crown." Also, Hadfield mentions that Ihakala was a former employee of his who had been removed many years ago for reasons immaterial to the present question. In other words, Ihakala may have been holding a grudge against Hadfield. I feel the need to say at this point that I am not certain of the legitimacy of this petition, but on balance it seems like it was most likely a genuine political statement that the governor attempted to discredit in order to keep his reputation and position. Or at the very least there is very little actual evidence that the petition is not legitimate, and what evidence there is can be easily explained. Ultimately, either Ihakala is lying, or Hadfield is lying and managed to manipulate the people of Otaki into signing a document en masse not once but twice. So, Māori outside of Taranaki did not come running to the aid of Wellington and Te Atiawa in defence of Waitara. Over time, a large number of people from iwi supporting the king would go to Taranaki to fight, but the king movement itself did not join in the conflict. Likewise, while Te Atiawa around Wellington were supportive, they chose a more peaceful route to support their northern relatives. However, in the Taranaki province itself, Te Atiawa found a lot of support, with Taranaki iwi and Ngāti Rua Nui coming quickly to the aid of Wellington.